What's going on, lads and lasses? Welcome back to 100% Mags. So, of course, the recent news that is going around right now is coming from, of course, Craig Hope. He broke the news on this one. A deal of 38 million has now been agreed between Aston Villa and Newcastle United for Jacob Ramsey. This is a massive deal. He's going to be travelling up to, of course, Tyneside later on this afternoon and will begin his medical this evening. If it's done in time, then we will possibly see him, of course, feature maybe in the game against Aston Villa, either starting or on the bench, probably on the bench if he does feature in, of course, the game. And looking at, of course, the other news around the team as well, we have signed Malik Chow from AC Milan. Of course, this is the news on the Jacob Ramsey deal. As you can see up on screen right now, he will be travelling, like I said, up to Tyneside this afternoon and will begin his medical this evening. That coming from, of course, Craig Hope, then backed up by, of course, Fabrizio Romano, of course, who is also claiming an exclusive on this one, saying Jacob Ramsey at Newcastle, here we go, agreement for 40 million fee from Aston Villa. Ramsey agreed on personal terms and travels for medical at Nufc right now. Ramsey strongly wanted Newcastle and deal now done according to Romano. Then I did promise a viewer the last time I was live that I would look into this one as well. Nick Waldmed from, of course, Stuttgart. And it looks like Newcastle have been keeping an eye on him. He is probably a target that we are going to be quite interested in. And, of course, as you can see here, Bayern Munich today submitting a new offer for him, but proposing a 60 million plus bonus payment and a sell-on clause. In Stuttgart rejected it, so there's still a chance that that deal could go ahead as well. But let's go, of course, to the news regarding the signing of course, none other than Malik Chow. Just 1 second whilst I get that onto the screen. But let us know your thoughts, down in the comments below. What did you think about this deal for Malik Chow? As you can see here, Eddie Howe's thoughts on the signing. Eddie, of course, saying we're really pleased to have Mali on board. He's a player I've admired for a long time and somebody who will add real quality to our defensive options. Malik is still young but brings valuable experience of Champions League football as well as playing in the Bundesliga and Serie A, which is a major positive for us as we return to Europe this season. So Eddie well and truly impressed with the lad, and I'm really impressed with the lad as well. Looking at what he's done in his career, he's really, really good player, really good signing for us. Finally, we've got a player in that centre-back role as well who is going to be able to progress forward with the team. And we've got some youth in that back line as well. And, of course, as I said in a short video on the channel as well that I did, the YouTube shorts, I was talking about, of course, the whole deal behind this Malik Chow to Newcastle United and the fact that, Paolo Maldini wanted him at AC Milan, along with, of course, Sven Botman, and now we've got both of them at Newcastle United. So that is a massive glowing recommendation right there. If somebody like Paolo Maldini was wanting this kind of setup, that tells you all you need to know about Mali and, of course, Botman in a partnership for the defence as well going forward. And then there's talk as well on Johan Wissa. Johan Wissa is a done deal according to the reports coming from Keith Downey. He's saying that, it's been a done deal for a while, but it's been, Brentford holding the deal back because they're waiting to get their replacement. And there's moves going at the moment right now. There's a lot of moves going on right now that could affect that Johan Wissa deal in a positive light. With, of course, Bournemouth pretty close to getting their replacement. There's another team also that's looking close to getting the replacement, who, of course, Bournemouth are buying the player off of them. They're looking for their replacement. It's a whole domino effect across the Johan Wissa deal, and it is looking really, really good going forward as well. Hi, Luke. Welcome to the channel. All fans are welcome here, Luke, mate. So thank you for tuning in to the channel. Really appreciate the support. And if you can, please hit a like on the video. We've got 15 people watching this live stream so far, and it would mean a lot if you could just hit that like button down below. And if you are a Newcastle United fan, or even if you're not a Newcastle United fan and you just want to keep up to date on what Newcastle United is doing and what we're doing as a club going forward, then hit that subscribe and turn on the bell for all notifications. But let us know your thoughts down in, of course, the comments in the live chat here. What do you think of Jacob Ramsey? I mean, he's a really good player. I've seen him play in the Premier League quite a bit. I've seen him play last season. He's got some really good moments throughout his career. He's one of their own as well. So we're taking away a player from Aston Villa, that has come through the academy at Villa. And there is a story behind it as well that has to be said. When Villa, of course, sell Jacob Ramsey, which it has been agreed, which is just a medical to do now. Unfortunately, Aston Villa won't be able to spend any of that money due to a ruling with UEFA to stay in line with their profit and sustainability rules. And that means that even though it is pure profit of the 38 million, 40 million fee for, of course, Jacob Ramsey, it means Aston Villa won't be able to spend any of that, unfortunately, because they have to stay within line of UEFA's ruling. And that, I feel, shows, the situation that we're in right now, in football, that FFP, PSR, all of these free little words, acronyms aren't really doing anything for football going forward. It's keeping teams back that want to compete. It's keeping teams back that want to go forward and progress with their club. And, we're seeing that again here with Aston Villa. And as a Newcastle United fan, this has happened to us as well. And I don't like seeing it happen to any team, because it's just not right at all. Looking at some of the comments here, we've got a comment from 2Nut1. Good name there, mate. We need 2 forwards in before we can consider letting Isak go. Yeah, I fully agree. At first, before this whole Isak situation went on, mate, we needed just one backup to come in for the departing Callum Wilson. Now we need 2 because of this whole Isak situation. It's quite evident that Isak, is for some reason falling out with Newcastle United. I don't know why. I don't want to read it too much into it. I don't want to speculate on it neither. But something clearly, on his side hasn't gone right. We're giving him contract offers and he's rejecting them right, left and centre. And now we're in a situation where we've got a player that isn't happy to be here. He wants to move on. He wants to go to Liverpool and he wants to move away from Newcastle United. The only problem is Liverpool don't want to offer the offer that we're asking for, which is, of course, reported, by the way. It hasn't officially been stated that the club are after this amount, but reported is 150 million for Alexander Isak. Now, I feel, to be honest, that is a fair deal, because Isak's worth more than that. Looking at his stats, looking at what he's done since joining the Premier League, he's scored a lot more goals in a lot less appearances than what he was doing in La Liga before he came to the Premier League. So he has improved a hell of a lot under Eddie Howe and the backroom staff at Newcastle United. So going forward, I think we are deserving of at least 150 million bare minimum for Alexander Isak. It's a fair deal for a player that is right now at the moment, 25 years old, be 26 this year. You know, he's heading into them prime years of a Premier League striker. He's heading into them prime years of a striker. And we are deserving of that money going forward. And yeah, like you say, he was promised more money than the club changed its mind. That's what I've heard, but only rumours. That isn't unfortunately it, mate. You know, unfortunately, that's not what it is. You know, the club have offered 200 grand a week from what I've heard, and he's rejected it. He's on 120 grand a week. You know, he's only going to be getting, if he moves to Liverpool, maybe 300 grand a week. That's 100 grand more, you know. And yes, that seems like a lot of money, but when you look at Liverpool compared to Newcastle, is there anything that you can do at Liverpool that you can't do at Newcastle? Some people might say, yeah, you can go and, you know, win the Premier League. But is it given that, you know, you're going to go there and win the Premier League? It's not guaranteed. You know, you can't guarantee that you're going to win a Premier League. And nobody ever can. The same goes for cups. Nobody can ever guarantee that you're going to win a cup in a season. It's football, and it's a funny old game, as the saying goes. And at the end of the day, you know, when you look at it, nobody can ever guarantee that somebody's going to win silverware at that team. And looking at what Liverpool's got so far, you know, and what they're playing in, it's nothing really different to what we're playing in. We're playing in the Champions League, they're playing in the Champions League. We're playing in the Premier League, they're playing in the Premier League. We're in the League Cup, they're in the League Cup. We're in the FA Cup, they're in the FA Cup. You know, there's no differences whatsoever between the two teams. And I really don't see why, you know, you would want to go away from somewhere like Newcastle, you know, where we are yet to win the Premier League title, where, you know, yet to win the Champions League, we're yet to win this stuff, you know. So if you win it with Newcastle United, that will be the first time that, you know, we've won that trophy. That will be the first time that anybody has done that in the history of our club. So in my eyes, if I was Alexander Isak, I would be staying at Newcastle United. Obviously, I'm biased in this because it is my club. But if that was me as a neutral in Isak's situation, I would be staying at Newcastle United and looking at winning them trophies at Newcastle, not winning them at Liverpool, not going elsewhere to win them. Because yes, you can win them there. Maybe there's no guarantee, like I say, but if you do that, then it's only going to be added to the pile. But if you do it at Newcastle, you're a legend forever. Look at the League Cup last season. You know, look at all the lads that played their part in getting that first piece of silverware for Newcastle United in 70 years, 50 odd years since we last won the Intercities Fairs Cup in 1969. You know, them lads are all legends now. They'll be etched in the history of Newcastle United forever as the team that finally got Newcastle United silverware in all them years. So that is worth a lot more than just being added to a pile in a footnote in a piece of history for the club, you know, like Liverpool or somebody like that. And that's my, you know, take on this whole situation. I really don't see the reasoning behind, you know, why you would go to these teams. But at the end of the day, it's his prerogative if that's where he wants to go. Liverpool's got to cough up the door before he goes, because, you know, they can't pressure him into remove and get him for lower than what, you know, the asking price is, which is rumoured to be 150 million. And if that is the case and that is the fee, then, you know, the club's going to obviously stand very firm on that and not change that fee at all moving forward. Looking at the comment from Luca, hey mate, welcome to the channel. Hope you're doing well, Luca, mate. Yep, good. That's good, mate. We've got 2-0 again. Liverpool are better than us. They walked away with the league last season. We were lucky to get Champions League. I really don't agree with that, mate. I really don't. We did a lot last season. Was probably one of our best seasons. Yes, I'll give you, we weren't very good in the first half of the season, but once we got to that December period, we turned it on. We did what we do best. we got out there, we got the results, we got the points on the board, and that is all that we, need to do as a club. We went out there and we got the results and got ourselves into a position where we were able to go and get Champions League football again. And if you look at the form, that we had in that period as well, when we switched it on and we went for it, if we had had that form earlier on at the start of the season, right the way through, we could have been up there, challenging for the title. At one point, there was this moment where we could have been second in the league, and unfortunately lost a couple of matches here and there, or drew a couple of matches there and there, and that, took us down out of that position. But at one point, there was a point during the season where we could have took second place in the league, and it's just unfortunate. Like I say, that's the way football goes. But I disagree, with the fact that Liverpool are better than we, because I don't agree with that. I really don't. Looking at it, when it was down at the wire, it was us against them in the League Cup final. And I know a lot of people will say it's one game, but it's a game of football. At the end of the day, when it was us against them one-on-one in a League Cup final, we beat them in 90 minutes. Look at the matches last season that we played against them in the league. We were really, really good in them. Liverpool were lucky at times to come away from them games with the result that they did. And that, for me, shows that we are closing down that gap between the teams like Liverpool, like Man City, like Arsenal. We are, starting to close that gap down now. And that is what is worrying a lot of these, fans of these teams and the clubs themselves. The clubs themselves are getting worried about it. And that is why we're seeing the tactics that's been done this window, get Alexander Isak. And yes, maybe Liverpool might have an interest in him, but there's probably a little underlining tactic here as well. Maybe unsettle Isak going into the Premier League as well. And I wouldn't be surprised, considering that last season we're seeing Liverpool doing a sort of similar tactic with Anthony Gordon, before Anthony Gordon signed the contract and told them to pretty much do one, which was, an amazing thing by Gordon, brilliant thing to say, I'm happy at Newcastle United, I don't want to leave Newcastle United. And, Isak just needs to come out, and if he's in the sort of similar situation at Gordon, where he doesn't want to leave Newcastle, which it seems like he's had his head turned at some point, because he was happy, with Newcastle playing in the Champions League this season. He was happy with all of the other stuff as well, and then it was just a certain point recently where we've seen these comments coming out. So either it was underlining all along, or it's been something completely, that's been turned on because of this whole situation with Liverpool, pushing for to get him to their club. Looking at another comment here by Two Nut, I want 200 million with 3 years left on his contract, 150 with 2 years, 120 with 1 year. It's a fair point, mate. Yeah, that's what I've said. I've said all along, 120 million, I don't think is the fee, to be honest. Maybe, like you say, if it's 1 year, then that's a good deal, I would say. But 200 million, 3 years, that is probably the bare minimum that we should be looking at getting for a player of this caliber. This is the best striker around, and that's not, being daft with that statement. That is a fact. Look at what he's done in the Premier League so far. Look at his accuracy in front of goal as well, how lethal he is on the ball when he gets his moments. He's done really, really well, and that is purely down to the fact that we've worked so hard with him since coming from Real Sociedad to Newcastle United. So, yeah, it's definitely, bare minimum 150, but we should really be pushing for that 200 million mark, because that is the level that Alexander Isak is going to be at. He's at right now, and he's got that potential to go even higher going forward. So I'd agree with the 200 million with 3 years left, 150 with 2 years left, and probably the 120 with a year left as well, because then you don't want the player moving on for free, do you? Latest news from May Intel: Liverpool are going to bid 135 plus add-ons in the next 48 hours. If that's true, mate, then it's a improvement on their offer that they've offered previous of 110. That's been reported, but again, it's still not close to that reported 150 million price tag that the club have supposedly put out on Isak. Obviously, there's a plus add-ons in there as well, but I don't think that would take it to the 150, because I really don't think Liverpool's got that amount of money right now. I mean, we've just seen them sign another player, and they're also looking at Guehi as well at Palace. So, they are spending their money elsewhere at the moment, and they don't have a lot of it to spend. So the window is getting closer and closer on the Isak deal, and it looks like it is going to eventually be, Isak playing at Newcastle United for the remainder of course, this season, and then probably getting a move in, of course, the summer of next season going forward. Looking at another comment from Tuna: Liverpool 84 points, Newcastle 66. They were minutes ahead of us, mate. That is obviously points wise, in the league, but when you look at it by form, you look at it by the way we're played in the game, it's not all about points. Yes, points win you the games, but looking at the form of things and looking how, we performed in the season, like I say, we had every chance of finishing second in the league last season, and just unfortunate in a few games, for to be dropping some points here, or losing out on some games against some teams. So that's my take on it, mate. But I take your opinion on board, and you're entitled to that. We got just 2 points out of 12 after we won the league. Liverpool could have reached 90 plus points easy. Maybe, maybe you could have reached 90 points, but again, Liverpool also were dropping off on games as well. There was a few games where Liverpool dropped off points as well. So at the end of the day, like I say, that's football. Things happen, but I'm not saying, that Liverpool weren't good last season. They did do well, but there was moments, like most teams, where they do drop off, and these things happen going forward. We've got another comment there by Two Nuts, another comment again. LFC fan: what do you think will happen with Isak, if he will stay or go, and how much the price? Like I says, Badro, mate, I think bare minimum it's 150 million for Alexander Isak, if that is the deal that the club is putting out there, which we haven't seen any official statements from the club. We haven't seen any official, comments from Yasser Romani or anybody at the club stating 150 million. This has purely been, the media putting that out there, and I think that is basically what this whole transfer saga has been as well. I think, to be honest, it's basically been a media-driven story where Liverpool have had an interest in Isak, but I think there's a lot of media-driven noise around this as well. And I think at the moment, unless Liverpool cough up that amount of 150 million, I don't see Alexander Isak leaving Newcastle United in this window. I think, come September, when the window closes, I think we will still probably see Alexander Isak at Newcastle United, and he will play with us, if he decides to, come out of the mood that he's in and of course he will play for Newcastle United, but he does have to come out and apologise to the fan base for what has been going on his point, because the amount of news coming around, he does have to make some sort of a statement about it on his part. And obviously we've seen the reports in the news circulating around of late about his agent and what he's been up to over his time as an agent in football, and what he did, of course, with the likes of Abramovich at Chelsea, into the fact that FIFA has investigated him quite a bit. His agent, of course, of Alexander Isak. So that in itself does bring a lot of cloud over this whole saga, and it does let a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes here as well, because I think his agent's playing a big part in this. I think the media's playing a big part in this. And yes, Liverpool, like I said, are interested, but unless you offer that money, I don't see him really going in this window, because we're not going to accept anything like 120 million. Oh, I don't even think would accept that offer that was just mentioned before there, 135 plus add-ons, because Alexander Isak is, bare minimum 150, or we should be pushing for the 200 million mark, because he is that kind of player. He's got that ability going forward as well. But I hope that answers your question there, mate. And looking at 2-0, even if we finish second, it'd still be 10 plus points. It doesn't matter, mate. At the end of the day, last season we had the best season we've had in recent history. And, even if Liverpool did finish first last season, we would have still ended up finishing second. And I'm not saying, that we're going to go out there and win the Premier League title. Far from it. At the end of the day, anything can happen, obviously, but I'm not going to go out there and say, that Newcastle are going to win the Premier League title this season, because we're not at that point yet. We need more players to be able to get to that point, but we are at a point where, we are getting scalps off of teams like Liverpool, like Man City, like Arsenal. We're getting scalps off of these teams. And if you're doing that, you're getting closer and closing that gap on them teams every single season. And that is what we're seeing. Last season we beat Arsenal, I think, was 3 or 4 times last season. Tottenham were beaten pretty much quite a lot last season. We've beaten them in previous seasons as well since the takeover. And then, we've gotten more results in the past against Man City. We can see the progress happening, going forward. So it is getting there, but these teams like Liverpool, like Man U and all of that, they've all had time to build up their revenues. They've all had time to build up their squads, to compete season in, season out. And we are only at the point where, we've got to take over and we're trying to build, to that level. And obviously it's going to take more time. But because we've got it now and we didn't get it when they got it, we are reaping the rewards much faster, because we're growing year upon year, 40% revenue increase year upon year, because the deals that we're signing now are the deals like, that them teams were signing 5, 6, what have you, years ago, but they're worth a lot more now, because the money is a lot more in football now going forward as well. So we are reaping the rewards on that one. But that wouldn't change, the fact of Liverpool being 10 points ahead or what have you. At the end of the day, I don't really care where any other team finishes, just as long as, Newcastle United's doing good at the end of the day, because that is my club. That's what I'm interested in. Red one here saying, I wanted Isak with a full pre-season. Now I'm not so sure he's ready physically or mentally. that's entirely down to, your club mates. They needed to come in and they needed to offer the real offer. But it's quite obvious and quite evident, that there's been low ball offers being given here, and we're seeing that a lot this window. We've seen it with the offer that Liverpool put in. They haven't come back in since, and it was a low ball offer. Was a low ball offer. A lot of people have said it themselves. Even Liverpool fans have said, it was a low ball offer, in that, Liverpool should have offered a better deal to Newcastle for Isak. But that is entirely down to your club mate, not being spending the money, not coming in and spending the money when they needed to, going forward to try and get Isak before the season starts. Looking at Badro, got why NUFC fans don't understand that Isak don't want to play for your team, accept and move on. Is Isak bigger than NUFC? I think so. I wouldn't agree. Isak's a good player, yes. Is a player bigger than a club? No. At the end of the day, that's looking at it the wrong way. No player is bigger than a team. And once you start looking at it in that way, and you start getting that mindset into the mind of the player that they are bigger than the team, that is when you start having these problems with these prima donna footballers, like Marcus Rashford, believing that he's much bigger than Man United, and other players, where they're spoiled brats, they're throwing the toys out the pram constantly. They're saying, I'll take my ball and I'll run off home if you don't give us this contract. And I think once you start getting that and you start putting that mindset into the player's mind that they are bigger than the team, that is when you put yourself into a situation where you have, players just constantly causing problems because they know that they've got you over a barrel. And that's something that Newcastle United don't do. That's something, that we have strived to not have at this club under this ownership. We are not a stepping stone club. We might have been under Mike Ashley, but this is the Saudi era. This is PIF. This is, the Reuben brothers owning Newcastle United. This is a new era for Newcastle moving forward. We are no longer a stepping stone club. We go out there and we look for players that are on that cusp of being household names, or players that haven't quite made it to that cusp of being household names yet. Bringing them in. Got a brilliant manager in Eddie Howe who knows how to train these players, knows how to get the best out of them. And we're seeing massive signings like Bruno, Sandro. Joe Linton was obviously at the club, but look at what Eddie's done with him. It turned him into an absolute powerhouse in the midfield forward. Who would have thought, that a player like Joe Linton, who looked absolutely dreadful, by the way, when he came in for 40 million from Hoffenheim, but now he's an absolute monster in the midfield, a pure tank, a pure engine of a player. And then you look at other players, in the squad that Eddie's improved as well, the likes of Jacob Murphy. And then, we've got other players coming through the youth team as well now. Looking at the youth setup, we've got some of the best talents in the world in our youth setup coming through. So that in itself shows, that Newcastle is a big club. Isak, in my opinion, isn't bigger than the team, and no player is. It's always the name on the front of the shirt that matters, not the name on the back. And like I've said, once you start putting that mindset of the player is bigger than the team, that is when you start getting these problems of players, just throwing their toys out the pram like left and centre. So I don't agree with that. I really don't agree with that comment there, mate. Going forward, looking at another one from Tuna Badro. Do you understand how contracts work? That's why we don't want to let him go. He has 3 years left. So, lasses, let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Before we wrap off the live stream, just want to put up, of course, the breaking news coming from, of course, Craig Hope and, of course, Romano of Jacob Ramsey at Newcastle United. Here we go. Agreement for a 40 million fee from Aston Villa. Ramsey agreed on personal terms and travels for medical at Newcastle right now. Ramsey strongly wanted Newcastle and deal now done, according to Romano. He is travelling up to Tyneside later on this evening, and of course will be having his medical at Dorset Park. And also we did sign, of course, Malik Chow the other day on a deal until 2030, €4 million a year deal. And he joins, of course, from AC Milan on a 34.6, I believe it was, fee deal. And of course, according to reports as well from Keith Downey and NUFC Will, the deal for Johan Wissa is always been done. It's just waiting on, of course, Bournemouth, waiting on, of course, Brentford to get the replacement, of course, going forward. But anyway, let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Just look at one last comment before we end off the stream here from To Nut. This transfer window has been a massive wake up for me, seeing all these rejecting us, especially the Man United deal, offering less money and still bagged the deal. But that's what I was saying, mate. This is going to happen. These players, for some reason, just seem to want to go to these teams. It's that mentality that if they go there, they're going to be the one that makes these teams better again, and it's never the case. As I've said many times on the channel before, we've seen it, these players just constantly wanting to go to these teams and thinking that they can be the saviour, and it just doesn't work out for them. It really doesn't. And looking at one last comment, hi Melik for officially being unveiled as Newcastle United player today, and Jacob Ramsey doing his medical at Newcastle United today, and Alctus and Wissa and Sammy to Newcastle United. I'm not too sure on the Alctus, mate. I don't know if that one is that the guy from Leicester. If so, I don't know if that one's going to go ahead still or not. And Sammy, I think that's the guy from Porto. That would be a really good deal, but I don't know what's happening on that one yet. And of course, Wissa, like I just said, it's always been a done deal, but it's waiting on the side of Brentford, of course, to get their replacement for the player as well. One last comment, they will buy Northampton Town 25 soon. My last one, I'm seeing my money. Good luck, mate. Hope you enjoy your shirt, and thank you for watching the channel. To everybody that's tuned in and watched the live stream today, thank you. Please, on the way out, if you can, it's completely free, hit the like button. And if you're wanting to see more Newcastle United news, stay up to date on things for Newcastle going forward, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell for notifications, as I'm on the road to 2.5k subscribers, and I'll see you all in the next one. However,